Hi everyone, I've come to a bit of woodland near where I live to talk about lighting a fire when you've got dry conditions. A nice easy way to light a fire when you're in dry conditions. Dry is important because moisture is the enemy of fire. Every bit of water you find in your wood, in your kindling, in your tinder, the fire has to be that bit hotter to burn off the water to then get itself hotter again. And we need that heat. You need that heat in lighting any fire. We talk about going through grades of wood. So when you're trying to light a fire, you're trying to get up to big logs of wood because they burn hotter, they'll burn longer. So you can either then set stuff up to cook a meal, or you can set something around for the evening, keep yourself warm for the evening. So you are trying to get up to that big log. But every time you increase in size, it needs a higher temperature to light that piece of wood. So that's why we start with tinder, because tinder is the little fine bits and they light at quite a low temperature. You get a lot of tinder burning, you can blow on it, get more oxygen to it, and that will then burn hotter, and it can light the next size of wood, the kindling, the tiny little bits. And then you just go on and on, bigger, more of that burning, blow on it, get it hotter, it will light the bigger bit, but that up to your log. Now, if you've got dry weather, lucky enough to be dry weather, you've got lots of things. If you've got a woodland, which a lot of scout camps are, a lot of places where we'll be lighting fires are, you'll have some woodland. So what we're looking for is in the undergrowth, most times of year, you'll have bits of dead stuff in amongst the undergrowth. Now, you want it in amongst the undergrowth, you don't want it on the ground, because if it is wet, the ground will be where it's wettest. If you get it up off the ground, two things, it's up off the wet ground, but also, if there is any wind, you can hear the wind in the trees maybe. Oh, some lovely quaking aspen above me, making that lovely rustling noise. If they are up off the ground, the wind will be blowing through them and keeping them dry as well. So that's where we collect tinder from. So I'm going to go, when I finish this video, I'm going to walk through here, I'm going to pick up lots of little bits of dried grass, dried dead things in the ground. So the next side up, if I don't want to have to spend time carving away at a piece of wood to get the size of bits of wood I need, what's the next best thing I can do? Well, what I can do is I can look for trees that have tiny little branches. And if you get really lucky, you can find a dead tree that's got lots of these tiny little branches. Now, just up here, I spotted a minute ago, there's a blackthorn. Now, there's a couple of good trees to know. You don't need to know the names of them actually, but blackthorn, silver birch, hawthorn, all end up with growing these kind of branches where you can see here all these lovely thin branches, and you can always tell if they're dead, a lovely dry crisp snap, and you can see how thin some of these are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect lots of these because it's all dead anyway and there doesn't seem to be anything making it its home. So I'm going to collect lots of these, and then, like I said, I'll collect the next branch up, the next size branch up, next size branch up, and I'll take that back home. How do I know how much to have? There's a simple rule of thumb, simple method to this. When you look down and you think you've got enough, double it. And that's sort of flippant because obviously every time you look down, there'll be an amount and you have to double it. It's much easier, it's much better to have too much than not enough. But you can look online and you can see little things talking about, there's some quite simple rules on the hands. So, for instance, the first stage of stuff should be about as thick as your fingernails, and you need something about as wide as your hand to do that. You need that amount of material about that big, so a good handful size of tinder. Kindling, that's sort of not quite as big as your little finger, but still quite thin, and you want both hands of that. And then the next size up is about the size of your thumb, and you'd want armfuls of that kind of stuff, or half armfuls. But like I say, it's just always better to have too much of it than not enough. So those amounts I just gave, that is a lot of wood, but it means you'll get your fire going each time. Okay, I'm going to go and pick some branches off this tree, take them home, and I'll see you in a second, show you how to light this. I've brought everything back to my garden, got fire pit out, and I've put all the dry material I kind of found in there, and I've sort of processed down all the other bits. So I found all these twigs, and I've sort of split them up into really fine stuff, that's sort of fingernail and a bit bigger, sort of small pencil up to a pencil, pencil through to your thumb, and then thumb and bigger. I haven't got a very big pile of the big stuff because I'm not on about trying to get a really long-lasting fire here. This is just sort of getting something started. Now, preparation is key. When I light that dry material, that tinder, that's just going to go up. It's not going to take long to get going. So I haven't got long. I haven't got time to be going backwards and forwards, finding more bits if there's not enough. Which is why I say this thing about preparation, because you haven't got long. I've even prepared a little bit. I've fluffed up all this dead stuff, and I've already started putting the very thinnest bits on top. So hopefully they'll light. Now, source of ignition, I'm going to use a lighter today because I've only got one hand, because I'm holding the phone with the other. I've got nothing problem with a lighter. You know, this is be prepared, this is scouting. You should be thinking about where your next fire is coming from. Alright, other videos we'll be talking about how to use friction fire lighting, whatever else. But right now, let's go with a lighter. So let's get this hay going, this dry material. Right. So when we can see that's burning nicely, we can already see some of the wood's taking. It's hot enough to take that. Might as well light the other side of this as well. Oh, it's just gone as well. Don't worry too much if the flames go, because there's plenty of kindling there. It's going to be warm enough to... I wasn't expecting it to fall over though. Let's hope it stays a bit. So flames have died, but we should be able to get that going again. Right, all my little bits fallen off because it's fallen over, but we get those back on top. Back to that making things hot, keeping a bit of breath on them, add a few more twigs because we got a bit more substance to it now. Right, so I think I've got the next layer, the next size is burning down the bottom here, so I think I can start adding more little bits down here. So I think we've successfully used the very smallest bits to light the kindling. So now in the next stage of the fire, we're to build it up slowly. We mustn't suffocate the fire, mustn't put anything on it. We can be slightly relaxed because we've now got some heat in this, and this is sort of saying heat is the key. You always need to think about where the heat in the fire is. Got all my little bits. Right, I'm just going to let that burn in a bit because I think we're starting to get a bit of an established fire now. And I'm going to reach back and find my next biggest bits of twig. So I've got my next bundle ready. So can I start putting some of these on? And again, these will be a slightly higher temperature to burn, but we've got all those little bits in there, and they are producing enough heat. I might even be able to start throwing some bigger bits on here. Oh, I can feel it on my hands. I can feel that there's plenty of heat growing in there, so I'm going to let that burn through a little bit while I reach round and get my next batch of twigs. In fact, I might even say I'm allowed to call these ones sticks. So you can see that's really starting to get quite hot, burning in some of that bigger stuff. I can be more relaxed about this now. This is a much more stable fire. I'm going to have to really work hard to put this out now because there's plenty of heat, plenty of flames, but I've got all the prepped stuff here ready, so I can now get all this big stuff on. You see how whilst I am throwing it on quite higgledy-piggledy, it's also in a way where there's lots of air inside. Lots of air can get through. I've put the fire on the right side of the fire bowl so the wind can get at it. And like I say, that is now pretty safely established fire. As long as we keep building up through the sizes, this will all be fine. We'll struggle to put that out now. I'm going to reach back to get my final size, the biggest bits that I'm going to use today. You see, I said the wind's on the right side to be getting at this. That'll help me get it settled. When it's a little fire, you can worry about the wind. If it is very windy, you can sometimes set your body to protect it against the very early. Some people say if you kneel in front of your fire with the wind to the back, then when you've got it more established, you can then open your legs and the wind can come between your legs and get at the fire then. But you do need to protect the fire when it's early. And we're at that stage again where you're just watching me waffle on while we all watch a fire. But isn't that pretty much what scouting is? Sitting staring at a fire while someone waffles on. I think if you're doing it right, it probably is.